Today, I'm going to be going over all of the best routes, tips, and shortcuts that you need to know in order to improve your time as much as possible and maximize your odds into getting in the top 10% in the Underworld Cup in Disney Speedstorm. For those who don't know, the Underworld Cup is a brand new time trial based limited event where you try and improve your time as much as possible, and then you get ranked amongst everyone else who plays the cup, and depending on your percentile of your placement, you get a certain amount of rewards. So if you're in the top 10% of players, you will get 25 Hades shards. The top 25% also gets 10 Hades shards, and anything after that, unfortunately, you don't get enough shards to unlock Hades, which really sucks, and you want to improve your time as much as possible, obviously, so you can unlock this brand new epic racer. I'm currently ranked number 231 on the leaderboard with a best time of 155.7. However, I'm working a lot to improve my time, and I think I know all of the best routes, tips, and tricks in order to maximize your odds into getting in the top 10%. So let's go over my personal best run. Alright, here we are on the Mount Olympus track, and now the first thing to note about Hades is his boost is really annoying at the start. He is a trickster, so you're going to want to spam the trigger button, the acceleration button, in order to get yourself in that lime green area. Then when you start, immediately drift to the right, try and not bump into the AIs. This is one of the most RNG based components of the run. As you can see right here, I collide with Stitch and Jasmine, which slows me down ever so slightly, but there isn't really a ton you can do about it. Now there are some faster routes which I will talk about after. However, I believe this pathway is the easiest to follow, and some of the other stuff that a lot of the top players do is just a little too confusing in my opinion. At this part with the big archway, jump up onto this grind rail and immediately try and balance yourself on the middle of the rail. That way you'll get the speed boost faster and your boost bar will begin to fill up. Then you can activate your boost bar, and when you get to this section with the speed pads right here off of the grind rails, there is a well-timed jump you can do. However, I think the risk is too high in my opinion, so I just let myself roll over both of the boost pads, not really interfering or drifting at all. Then I drift and try and get a full drift boost off before I reach the lip of that little hill right here. At this section with the grind rail, hop on it. I think that it is faster. There is a slightly different way you can take with drifting. And then go to the left of this big pillar, hit both of these boost pads, and continue drifting your way on up to the top of the ramp. And then as you approach the top of the ramp, you're going to want to be prepared to do an aerial stunt. As you fall down, press the jump button mid-air. Now, as you can see, I get Hades' unique ability, and if you're wondering whether you should do the normal activation or the charged activation, I'm here to tell you it really does not matter. At this part where there is a fork in the road, it really doesn't matter which way you go as long as you can continue to drift. That is the biggest tip I have for this event, is that you should be drifting as much as possible. It is by far the most important part of this event. Hades is a trickster, which means he's going to get all of his boost from drifting pretty much, because his abilities are quite useless. As you can see, Hades' unique ability in this kind of race doesn't benefit you at all. Once again, at this section, I'm going to hop back up on the grind rail, let myself roll over both of these bumps, not jumping or drifting or anything, and then I get a full drift boost off before I go over the lip of that hill. And then on this section, once again, I get prepared to use the grind rail and go around both of these boosts. Again, like I mentioned before, I will go over the slightly faster routes that are a little bit more risky if you want to compete for a time on the top of the leaderboard and you don't just want to get in top 10%, you want to go above and beyond. I'll go over how you can do that after. And then at this section, I'm going to use my boost skill and go to the left just because it's a little more comfortable for me. However, the right is slightly faster. And at this section, don't bother about the boost pads, just drift your way to the finish line as fast as possible, and right as you approach the finish line, you do a little side bash and push yourself over the finish line just a half second faster. But now let's go over some of these slightly more difficult routes and show you how you can do those. Starting things off on the section with the large pillar and the grind rail and the boost pads, rather than going on the grind rail and hitting the boost pads and drifting around the pillar, you can start heading to the right and then drift back to the left and head up the hill. This is how Chi-Q does it in his world record run. I highly recommend you go check that out on YouTube, especially if you are competing for a top 100 leaderboard slot. If you're competing in the top just for the top 10%, it isn't really necessary to do a lot of the stuff he does in the video, but it is really cool to see all of the cool tips and tricks he applies, so I recommend you go check him out nonetheless. And moving on to the next optional shortcut. Now the next shortcut takes place at the very beginning of the race. Once you head up this blue pathway, rather than finishing your route on the blue pathway, you can actually drop down right here instead of getting those items and hit the little boost pad right here, and then just continue drifting your way along the path. Now I actually recommend you do take this. I just wasn't aware this skip existed when I did my personal best run, but it's pretty easy to pull off, and I definitely recommend that you implement it into your runs. And also, if you want to practice your runs, here is exactly how you can do that. Going to want to head on over to the local free play game mode, click one player, scroll on over to Mount Olympus, head to the Zeus circuit, and follow all of these settings right here. Have it on the hard difficulty with 7 CPU racers, 2 laps, and set the speed to faster. Then you just head into the menu and select Hades, and it'll be just like you were racing in the Underworld Cup, except your times won't actually count. So I highly recommend, before you go in and use your 3 attempts for the day, go into local free play, practice on this track, copy the routes in this video, try and hone your skills, practice drifting until you get a time that you are comfortable with, and then head into the Underworld Cup and show off your skills and your practice and your hard work. I guarantee it'll help you improve your times. Now, I know I just dumped a lot of information on you guys pretty quickly, so I'm going to give you a brief summary of tips while I play my personal best run in the background, this time without any slowdowns if you just want to see the run for itself. To start things off, the most important tip, once again, make sure you are drifting constantly. Hades is a trickster, which means he's going to fill up his boost bar from drifting, and this is by far the most important part of the event. If you can maximize drift chaining, it really doesn't matter what route you're taking, you're going to get in the top 10% if you're drifting constantly and filling up that boost bar. It is by far the most important thing. I cannot emphasize it enough. Now, to talk about Hades' item pool a little bit, it's actually really bad for limited events. In fact, none of his abilities are going to help you. His unique ability doesn't really help you. He has bomb and I think shot, which aren't super helpful. The one ability that you can pull from loot boxes or skill boxes that will actually help you a little bit is the rush power-up. Now, the rush power-up will obviously boost you forward on the track, and it is really the only good item that Hades has for these limited events. I see a lot of the top players save it for certain parts on the track. I don't do that personally, and it's definitely not necessary to use it like that to get in the top 10%, but if you pull the rush item, just know that your run might be a little bit faster, and it is a little bit RNG dependent, because if someone pulls rush on all of their item boxes, which is super rare, obviously they're going to have a much easier time getting in the top 10%. Now, unlike the Gaston event, there aren't any super incredible shortcuts on the Mount Olympus track, but the two biggest ones that you should follow if you're going to get in the top 10% is make sure you go on the up path after the pillar, and at the very start of the race, go on the higher path, the blue colored path, not the one on the bottom. Trust me, it will save you time, and if you follow those two shortcuts and all those guides, I really hope you get into the top 10%. Let me know if you have any questions about the Underworld Cup, or if there's anything else you need help with. You can also join my Discord server, link in the description below, and there are a bunch of players in there in the top 10%, all willing to help share their tips and tricks. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video helped, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out.